About I have 47 students here, and I know you are more than that. I'm told you are more than 100 or so.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir, we are more than.
But
There will be also.
my responsibility as a lecturer is not to wait for students, but for the students
Yeah.
to wait for me. And it is your responsibility as a student to sign in when the time is due. Uh, you may sign in. Sometimes lecturers take about 15 minutes for you to sign in so that they'll come in. But other lecturers, if it is time, they start right away. We have about 5 minutes uh, time that has been spent. And so I assume that students had enough time to sign in. So we'll start as and when they join, then they'll join where we are. All right, so our focus is going to be on arguments and non-arguments. So primarily, in this lecture, we will explain what constitutes an argument in logic, not an argument in the ordinary sense of the meaning of the word. What constitutes an argument in logic? So that if a logician says an argument, we should be able to know what it is. And if a logician says what is an argument, we should be able to know what it is. Along the line, again, we'll be explaining some basic concepts in logic and critical thinking. A concept like critical thinking, a concept like a premise, a concept like an argument, sorry, a statement, a concept like a proposition, a concept like a conclusion, inference indicator. These are some of the concepts we'll explain in the course of the lecture. So please take note as we explain these concepts because they are basic to critical thinking, logic and critical thinking. Once you understand these concepts, most of these concepts apply to some of the problems that we'll be solving in this course. So before we dive into these concepts and all that, first we need to understand what thinking is. What is thinking? Of course, it's not here, but I will put it here before I send it to you. When you say thinking, it is simply the understanding, analysis, explanation, examination of issues based on reasoning. In short, thinking is reasoning. And reasoning adopts a rational approach. Rational approach simply talks about measuring everything on the basis of what we can see and think about them. So rational approach makes verifiability a main element that we should be able to see and verify something and make a decision or conclusion about using reasoning as a basis. So now that we know what reasoning or thinking is, thinking simply means reasoning. Now that we know what reasoning or thinking is, we need to know what critical is. The word critical, which is an English word, is derived from a Greek word. So the English-speaking people copied this word from the Greek and adapted it in the way they spell words. So critical is derived from the Greek word kritikos, which means being able to discern or judge. In life, we make judgments. In life, we make decisions based on what we understand. Discernment is understanding. Some of you have to make a critical decision between using your money to start a venture or using your money to pay school fees to come to GCTU. That decision is a judgment you have made, having examined the problems before you, the issues before you. You took a certain decision to go along a certain line. That is a judgment for you. So we make judgments, we make these conclusions or decisions all the time, whether in our private capacity or working in an organizational setup, we make judgments. We also understand issues based on the application of the mind to the issues to carefully assimilate it. So when we say we have understood it, it's not based on our emotions. It's based on how we've been able to apply our mind to the issue to get it the way we think it is. Your understanding of issues may be different from somebody's understanding of issues. It may be due to our differences in the capacity of our mind or differences in how we apply the mind to the issues. And so long as we have different people, we will have different ways of discernment. So putting the two words together, critical and thinking, we'll get critical thinking. What is it? It's simply a system by which we evaluate, we formulate, we analyze whatever we are confronted with by rational standard on the basis of rationality. And as I said, rationality simply means the application of the mind to issues. So not understanding issues, not analyzing issues on the basis of emotions. Somebody would apply emotions to issues and will be able to assimilate or to get the issue based on how he or she applied the emotions to it. And so it is important for critical thinking to do away with emotions, with sentiments, and analyze issues the way they are based on how they appeal to the mind. So based on our definition of critical thinking, you can find that even the market one who has not been to school, the farmer who has not been to school, engages in critical thinking. In life, we must engage our minds to be able to think deep, to get solutions, or to make decisions. And these are some of the things that people who have not even been to school are doing. Some of you are successful businessmen and women, not because it's based on emotions, but because you have critically analyzed issues, analyzed market trends, analyzed consumer behavior, and came to a certain decision that this is the best thing to do to be able to propel my business forward. So now that we know what critical thinking is, we need to ask ourselves whether we have basic skills to engage in critical thinking. Critical thinking requires us to have some basic skills. And we'll run through these skills to know how we have a depth of it, how deep we have these skills, or how enormous we have these skills, and how we are. One of the skills we need to be successful critical thinkers is an analytical skill. This skill enables a person to be able to apply the mind to an issue, no matter how difficult the issue is, no matter how complex the issue is, the mind is able to break through the complexity, the difficulty of the issue, to be able to assimilate, to understand the issue in very simple and short way. Analytical skills. Sometimes you can be confronted with something, a dilemma, which appears to be complex to you. Somebody can just tell you, oh, this whole thing, it means this. In a very simple way. You can break it down in whatever component parts you think is appropriate. And you are able to just put the elements together to understand it in a simplified manner. You also need an evaluative skill. You need a skill that enables you to be able to compare things before you can take a decision. The comparison will give you the similarities and differences. You'll be able to assess things to determine their strengths and weaknesses, negatives and positives. That is an evaluative skill. Many of you, in life, we all do that. We evaluate things to determine what is right, the right path, the right decision to take. Your evaluation should not be based on emotions, applying the mind to the issues carefully to unpack the issue, to be able to know what is a negative part, what is the positive part. Or if you are comparing, to know the similarities and differences. And then you need an explanative skill. Certain things happen without the explanation, but you should be able to connect events together to be able to determine that one event is a cause of the other. One event is the reason why the other occurred. The other is the effect. Read through a pattern of events to determine the causes and effects. Everything you do, or many of the things we face in life, there are causes and effects. There are the reasons why they occur, and there are the reasons why they do not occur. So you need this skill to be able to pierce through everything that happens to know the reasons why they occurred, or the reasons why something has been prevented, and what are the possible effects. And then you also need an inferential skill. This skill enables you to draw a conclusion. Drawing conclusions are important in life because we cannot satisfy everything, or because we cannot take every decision. In all possible decisions that we have to make, there's one that you have to take and leave the rest. So you need this skill. Some of you can analyze, you can evaluate, you can explain, but sometimes when it comes to taking the right decision, that's a problem. So you need to sharpen your inferential skill so that you are able to lead yourself to the most viable conclusion that you have to take. You need a problem-solving skill. Life is full of problems. I'm sure some of you have solved problems today. No matter how difficult or easy the problem is, there are always, human nature would, always warrants that we find solutions to problems. Right? And so some of the problems, one thing is that it is important to identify the problem. In most instances, the identification of the problem is key. Once you identify the problem, there are laid down solutions to it that you know that if I apply this solution to it, then it will fix the problem. when you take your broken or your faulty phone to a repairer to fix it, the most important thing is for the repairer to identify the problem. Once he identifies the problem, he knows the solution to it. If you take your car to a mechanic, once he identifies the problem, then he knows that this is the solution or how to fix this problem. So there are some of them, they are laid down solutions to them. All that we need is to identify the problem. In some instances, the solution is permanent, where you can have the problem fixed once and for all. In other instances, the solution is temporal. You fix the problem, at least for a short while, and that space of time that the solution has been fixed enables you to find maybe a lasting solution to it. So your rent expires maybe this month, you don't have the money to pay. What's the solution to it? How do I solve this problem? Could it be that you will have to talk to your landlord to give you some time to mobilize the money? Or is it that you have to go and stay with somebody for a while? Or just that you take some leave of absence from your work so that you can just go and stay in the village or go and do something to get money? These are short-term solutions to problems. So whatever problem you have, it is possible to have a permanent solution. It is also possible to have a temporary solution, depending on your situation, depending on your predicament. But there are instances you know the solutions to the problem, you apply the solution to the problem is not fixed. Must you throw your hands into the air and say, oh, I've given up, I can't solve this problem? You have to go a step further. Just trying to solve the problem and the problem is not solved does not mean that you must stop abruptly. You need to engage yourself further. You will need a creative skill. A creative skill is a skill that enables you to think outside the box. Yes, this is the known solution to it. I've applied it, it doesn't work. Let me just do something or think through and say, no, I can solve it by creating a new mechanism. So if you think outside the box and you apply your own created solution, it is possible you can solve it. It is also possible you cannot solve it. But we don't just stop at the step of solving the problem using the known solution. When you use the known solution, it doesn't work. Create your own solution. Be imaginative to create a solution to it. When you have created solutions upon solutions to it and it doesn't work, you know that that is the end of it. Then you need an interpretative skill. Sometimes certain statements are made and we need to apply the mind carefully to the statement to be able to know the meaning of them. Somebody may say something to you, but it is up to you. It is up to you to tell the meaning of it. You need to interpret it. So if I say, you behave like the madman is a fool. I mean, you can apply your mind to it carefully. What do I mean by this? If I say you behave like the madman is a fool. What I mean by this is that I am indirectly telling you that you are a fool, but I haven't said it plainly for you. But you have to apply your mind to it to be able to get the meaning of it, to be able to get the relevance of it. In life, we have situations like that, which require that we apply our mind carefully to the issues that we are faced with to be able to tell the meaning. Are we fine? Are we fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we
So
are
I
fine.
don't need to go through the significance of critical thinking and all that. Those ones are easy for you to understand. Now, I'm assuming that we all have all the skills I have explained. Now, who can solve this question for me?
Please, me.
Yes. What's your answer?
So my answer is 3.
Why?
Because in the context of the family,
Yes. Extended family.
Yes, the extended family. The grandfather is one of the fathers of the two. Then
yes,
his son is
okay,
also
I understand
a
it. So let's take Christian Solomon, who is another male student here. Felix. So Christian Solomon Felix. Christian is a father to Solomon. Solomon is a father to Felix in the same extended family. So we have 2 fathers. Solomon is a son to Christian, and Felix is a son to Solomon. We have 2 sons, making 4. Christian is a grandfather to Felix. Felix is a grandson to Christian. Adding to the 4, we have 6. So when we do the permutation in terms of family relationship, we'll have it look like there are 6 people. But in reality, we are talking about what? 3 people. Your father's father is his father, or your grandfather is your father's father. The one who gave birth to you, or your father, you also call him, this one, your father, the one who gave birth to your father. So within that family tree, you have 2 fathers. Your grandfather is a father to your father. Your father is a father to you. You are a son to your father. Your father is a son to your grandfather. And then your father's father, you call him your grandfather. And then your grandfather calls you his grandson. So you have 3 people in the extended family. But when you do the permutation, you get it look like there are 6 people. But in reality, we have 3. This question is for 10 marks. Whoever answers it here gets 10 marks right away. And I will take your ID number, write it in my diary so that when the exam is due, you already have your 10 marks assured. So if you want to try, just put up your hand. All right, so if you can't do it, the next time we come for the face-to-face, I will demonstrate the meaning of it or how to solve it. I guess we'll have another face-to-face before you write your exam.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Please,
sir.
can you go back?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So now this other question, what is the answer to it? That will be, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
please, it's
C.
D.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
right.
C is correct.
It's
No, D.
C.
It's C. Good.
C,
When you
C.
put
It's
C
C.
there, yeah, you'll get dearest.
Dearest.
You'll get fair. You'll get there. You'll get fair and parent.
Sir, please, I will plead with you. Can you increase the font or your size?
Is it fine now?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let's move on to the concepts that we're talking about. So argument. What is an argument? What is an argument in logic? An argument in logic is simply a number of statements with a conclusion. A series of statements, sequence of statements with a conclusion. So any group of statements that there's a conclusion in them, or you can draw a conclusion from them, is an argument. So you can have 2 or 3 statements. There's a conclusion in it. That is an argument. Where you have a number of statements that contain a conclusion, or from which a conclusion can be drawn. Sometimes the conclusion is not stated for you, but if you look at the logical relationship between the statements, you can draw a conclusion. I said, for example, you behave like like the madman. The madman is a fool. I didn't state a conclusion, but the conclusion is that you are a fool. So based on the logical relationship between the 2 statements I made, you behave like the madman is a fool, we can draw a conclusion from it. That is an argument. So an argument is just a number of statements from which we can draw a conclusion, or from which there is, or which contain a conclusion. So what it means here is that an argument can be condensed into a mathematical form, can be reduced to a mathematical expression. Say A is argument. Now, P is premise, C is conclusion. We said a number of statements with a conclusion. The statements that provide evidence to the conclusion are called premises. So there might be premises, that the evidence, and there might be the conclusion. So if I say you behave like the madman is a fool, and then we draw the conclusion, therefore you are a fool. What is our evidence to support the conclusion that you are a fool? 1, you behave like the madman. 2, the madman is a fool. These 2 statements serve as the evidence to the conclusion. And the evidence to a conclusion in an argument is called premise, if there are 2 or more premises. So an argument can be written in a mathematical form as A is equal to P plus C, where A is an argument, P is the premises, and C the conclusion. All right. We mentioned that an argument contains premises and conclusion. All premises are known as propositions. A premise, the other name for a premise is a proposition. The other name for a conclusion is also a proposition. So a conclusion can be a proposition, and a premise can also be called a proposition. What is a proposition? It is a statement. Any statement that can be said to be true or false is a proposition. So when I say you behave like the madman, it's a statement. It can be said to be true or false. The madman is a fool. It's a statement. It can be said to be true or false. Therefore, you are a fool. It is a statement. It can be said to be true or false. So all statements are propositions. All propositions are premises. All propositions are conclusions. So a conclusion is a proposition. A premise is a proposition. You can call all of them. You can call a proposition a statement, and it's still the same thing. So you may be seeing the words or the concepts used interchangeably. When you find the word statement, it means a proposition. When you find the word proposition, it means a statement. And when you find the word conclusion, premise, you can use proposition for them. You can also use statements for them. So these are examples of argument. All students cheat in examination. We have evidence that all students cheat in examination. As I said, the statement that provides evidence to a conclusion is the premise. This one is not our conclusion. There are the BIT ICD students in GCTU. So if there are BIT ICDE students in GCTU, then they also cheat in the examination. If it is true that all students cheat in the examination, if it is true that there are BIT students in GCTU, the BIT students in GCTU are a subset of what? Students worldwide. And the characteristic of students worldwide is that they cheat in the examination. So the BIT students are part of the universal set, all students in the world. And the characteristic of all students in the world is that they cheat in the examination. Therefore, if you have BIT ICD students in GCTU, our conclusion will be that they also what? Cheat in examination. So BIT students, BIT ICD students in GCTU cheat in the examination is our conclusion. So if we can have statement like some politicians are corrupt, there are politicians in Ghana, because we don't say all politicians are corrupt. We can't say all the politicians in Ghana cheat in examination. But we say, therefore, it is likely that some of the politicians in Ghana are, sorry, because we didn't say all politicians are corrupt, we cannot say, our conclusion cannot be that all politicians in Ghana are corrupt. But we say it is likely that some of the politicians in Ghana are corrupt. So that is an argument. We have the premises which provide evidence to our conclusion. We have different ways that you can write your argument. You can write it as if it is in a prose form, not separating a statement from the other. So they are all together as you write your sentences or your paragraphs. You don't break them line by line, as in example 1, it's still accepted. Example 2, you break them line by line. Each statement takes a line or two, depending on the length of it. A line or more, depending on the length of it. So they are not joined together. That's another example. The third example is to write it this way, where you bring the horizontal line. Just like how we write things in maths. 2 times 2, then we draw a horizontal line. The one below the horizontal line is your answer, is your conclusion. So you can write it this way. When you bring the horizontal line to separate the premises from the conclusion, you don't need therefore, you don't need so, you don't need hence, only the statement. Now, your argument can be said to be a good one, and it can be said to be a bad one. If it's a good one, then the premises provide or provide support to the conclusion completely. In other words, the premises provide sufficient evidence to support the conclusion. Provide sufficient evidence to support the conclusion. That's a good argument. So if I say it rains today, if it rains today, I will not go to church. And I say it rained today, therefore I did not go to church. My evidence is that I'm giving myself a condition. If it rains today, then I will not go to church. There's evidence that it rained today. Then if I say I did not go to church, my premises provide sufficient evidence to my conclusion. If I say I'll go to school or go to church today, and I say I will not go to school today, then it means I will go to church today. I can't have my evidence like this and then conclude that I didn't go to church. Once the evidence is there, then it means you will have to go to church. So these ones are good arguments because the evidence is providing sufficient, sorry, the premises are providing sufficient evidence to support the conclusion. With a bad argument, the premises do not provide sufficient evidence to support the conclusion. The premises can be true, but the conclusion may be false. So if I say the cow in Manu's house is brown, the cow in Belinda's house is brown, therefore all cows are brown, that's a bad argument. The evidence is too little to support my conclusion. I've seen one cow in Manu's house, it is brown. I've seen one cow in Belinda's house, it is brown. It may be true that yes, the cow in Manu's house is brown. It may be true that yes, the cow in Belinda's house is brown. But it is false that all cows in the world are brown. So my premises are true, but my conclusion may be false. The same applies to this, that I've seen one lecturer in GCTU, he has a PhD. I've seen a second one in GCTU, he has a PhD. I've seen a third one in GCTU, he has a PhD. On the basis of these pieces of evidence, if I conclude that all GCTU lecturers have PhD, the conclusion may be wrong, but the premises are completely true. That yes, the three people I've seen, they all have PhD. It doesn't mean that on the basis of these pieces of evidence, I can jump to the conclusion that all lecturers in GCTU have PhD. That statement or that conclusion may be false. So where we have a bad argument, the premises may be true, but the conclusion may be false. Now we go to premises. What is a premise? We have already said a premise provides evidence in support of a conclusion in an argument in logic. So any statement that provides evidence on the basis of which we can draw a conclusion is a premise. All right. Now, we said a statement, so we need to furthermore explain what is a statement. We said a premise is a statement that provides evidence in support of a conclusion and argument. So what is a statement? What is a statement? A statement is a sentence that can be said to be true or false. You can verify, you can analyze it, and determine whether it is true or false. So every sentence that makes a claim, if it doesn't make a claim, it cannot be a statement. That makes a claim is a statement, because claims can be said to be true or false. So if I say the students in this class are intelligent, I am making a claim. It can be said to be true or false. Therefore, my sentence is a statement. So any statement, any sentence that can be said to be true or false is a statement. A sentence that can be said to be true or false is a statement. And we have two types of statements: objective statement and subjective statement. What is an objective statement? It is a statement that makes a claim which has a universal truth value. A statement that makes a claim which has a universal truth value. So universal truth value means can be true, can be false. It has a universal truth value. In other words, if it is true everywhere. If it is false everywhere. That is an objective statement. It makes a claim, and the claim has a universal truth value. So if I say Ghana gained her independence on 6 March 1957, this statement, whether you're a Ghanaian or not, whether you reside in Ghana or not, wherever you are, if you engage the facts, if you search for the facts, you will come to the realization that the statement is true, wherever you are. So long as you can engage the facts, you will come to this conclusion that it is true. And it will be true everywhere in the world. If I say Ghana gained her independence on 22nd March 1960. Now, this statement I have made, this claim I have made, if you engage the facts, search for the facts, you will come to one conclusion. And that conclusion is that it is false. Everywhere in the world, you will find that this conclusion is false. So that is an objective statement. If it is false throughout the world, universally. If it is true universally. Then we have a subjective statement. With a subjective statement, it makes a claim, but the claim does not have a universal truth value. The claim does not have a universal truth value. Subjective statements depend on who is making it and who is subscribing to it or not subscribing to it. Subjective statements divide opinion. They vary from person to person, time to time, and place to place. So if, for example, I say that the best political party in Ghana in the Fourth Republic is NDC, this statement will not have a universal truth value, whether you're a Ghanaian or you are not a Ghanaian. Some people will say, yes, the statement is true. Others will say, no, the statement is false. In fact, those who even say, yes, the statement is true, in the course of time, when they will change their mind and say, no, the statement is false. The same vein, those who say, no, the statement is false, some of them, in the course of time, may change their answer and say, yes, the statement is true. So for a subjective statement, it is not true all the time by all people and in all places. Neither is it false all the time by all people and in all places. It varies from person to person, place to place, and time to time. Simply, subjective statements divide opinion. All of us will not say that it is true, and all of us will not say it is false. All right, so we go to features of a premise. We have already said that a premise provides evidence for a conclusion in an argument. So that we already know. Before you can draw a conclusion, you must have evidence. We must have some basic facts to support it. So premises provide the evidence in support for a conclusion. We also said a premise has a truth value. We've already said that, and I said a truth value of a statement means that it can be said to be true, it can be said to be false. So the truth there does not mean that it is true all the time. No, its value can be true and its value can be false. That's why it is called truth value. And premises can be explicit in an argument. If they are explicit in an argument, what it means is that the premises are clearly written in the argument for you to see in black and white. They are not hidden. They are not missing. If it is two premises, they are all written there for you to see. Three premises, they are all written there for you to see. Not one is missing. So as in this example, we have two premises. Both of them are clearly written for you to see, and then you draw a conclusion. Some premises can be explicit. When they are explicit, they are not clearly written for you to see. In other words, they are missing. Some of the premises are missing in the argument. You have to analyze the argument and figure out the missing premise or premises. An argument with missing, at least one missing premise, is called an etymem. An etymem. An argument with at least one missing premise. So you see in the example one, we have only one premise. Sarah was not at the party. And then we concluded it could not have been Sarah that Jack was dancing with at the party. Because we know Sarah was not at the party. Therefore, we concluded that it could not have been Sarah that Jack was dancing with at the party. It means there's one premise which is missing. Who can figure it out for me? On what basis will we say that it could not have been Sarah that Jack was dancing with at the party?
So on the basis that Jack was dancing at the party.
And the basis that Jack was dancing with a lady at the party. Jack was dancing with a lady. Sarah was not there. We have seen that Jack was dancing with a lady at the party. Then we conclude that it could not have been Sarah that Jack was dancing with at the party. So if you say Jack was dancing alone at the party, it is wrong. Jack was dancing with a lady at the party. That is why we can conclude that while Sarah was not there, then it could not have been Sarah that Jack was dancing with at the party. Look at the second example. There's one missing premise. Anytime you have the phrase
which proves that
proves
you
that
don't have to be a slave queen to wear a black shoes.
yes, what's the missing premise? Something is missing there. On what basis do we have to say which proves that you don't have to be a slave queen to wear baka shorts? We know Alicia doesn't wear, but Alicia wears baka shorts. On the basis of that, we say that which proves, that is our conclusion, that you don't have to be a slave queen to wear baka shorts. What is missing here?
That means Elisha is the slave queen.
Alicia is not a slave queen.
She's not a slave queen. Everyone can wear biker shorts.
Is not a slave queen. So Alicia wears biker shorts. She's not a slave queen. Then we conclude that you don't have to be a slave queen to wear biker shorts. So you see that here you have to figure out the missing premise. All right, so premises can be compound and they can be simple premises. You see here I'm using proposition, the same premise. So what is a simple premise? A simple premise is a premise that makes only one claim. It makes only one claim. Kofi is dancing Agbaja. It makes only one claim. So it is a simple premise. Kofi is dancing, singing, and dancing Agbaja. It is making two claims. We can have one claim, Kofi is singing. We can have another claim, Kofi is dancing Agbaja. So it is making two claims. And it is what? A compound premise. You can also have it compound as Amma is singing and Kofi is dancing Agbaja. Compound, making two claims. Premises can be said to be general premises and they can be said to be particular premises. What is a general premise? A general premise makes a universal claim about an object. Hey, Felix. It makes a universal claim about an object. That is a general premise. All men are womanizers. All women are liars. That is, it is making a universal claim. Where you have some men are liars, some women are some men are womanizers, some women are liars. It is making a particular claim, a subset of the universal. So a particular claim makes a claim about a subset of the universal. It can be one person, it can be two or more. All right, so one basic thing you must know about a premise or a proposition is that it makes a claim and the claim can be said to be true or false. So the first thing you ask yourself, any sentence you see, ask yourself, does it make a claim? If it makes a claim, it is a statement. Then you move on to the next second. Is the statement true or false? Can it be said to be true or false? That is your premise or a proposition, a statement. Snow is green. I am making a claim. The claim can be said to be true or false. Therefore, it is a premise. This statement can serve as a premise. I am Kofi Amoabin. I am making a claim. The claim can be said to be true or false. But where you have what color is snow, it is not making a claim. We'll come to statements that do not make claims and therefore cannot be said to be what? Premises. So any statement in the form of any sentence in the form of a question is not a statement. Any sentence in the form of an exclamation is not a statement. And then if you have an incomplete sentence, it cannot be a statement because an incomplete sentence doesn't make a claim. So you find that the first question is not a claim and therefore cannot be a premise. Exclamation is not a claim, therefore cannot be a premise. The last two, they are incomplete sentences. And as you'll come to see in Unit 2 next week, an incomplete sentence is called a sentence fragment. It doesn't make a claim. It doesn't have a subject and it doesn't have a predicate. All right, so we'll move on to the next inferences. What is an inference? An inference is the steps you take to draw a conclusion. You don't just draw a conclusion in vacuum. You draw a conclusion by taking certain steps. And then these steps you take, you know that this is my conclusion. So in an inference, we have what is called an inference indicator. What is an inference indicator? Words, a word or group of words that will help you to identify a premise in an argument or identify a conclusion in an argument. Any word that will help you to identify a premise in an argument and also identify a conclusion in an argument is called an inference indicator. So an inference indicator does two things. One, it is a word that tells us the conclusion of an argument, the word or words that help us to know that this is the conclusion. And those words that help us to know that this is a conclusion are called conclusion indicators. So under inference indicator of conclusion indicator, the common word that serves as a conclusion indicator, the most common, is therefore. As soon as you hear therefore, the statement that comes after therefore is a conclusion. So that word therefore helps us to know that this particular statement is a conclusion. Thus, hence, so, which proves that, which shows that, which means that as a result, all these words help us to know that this is a conclusion. The statement that follows is a conclusion. Some of you use them together, so therefore. It is either you say so or therefore, but not so therefore. They mean the same thing. So most of the time, look for these words. They will help you to know that the statement that follows is a conclusion. And then we have premise indicator. Words or group of words that help us to know that this is a premise in an argument. And the common one is because. So I ask you that you are late to school. They say, I am late to school because I'm providing the reason. So I'm late to school is not my conclusion because that provides the reason for my answer. But it is not always the case that when you see them, then automatically they serve as premise indicator or conclusion indicator. We said the word since is a premise indicator, but in whatever follows, it must be a statement. But yesterday is not a statement. The word yesterday alone doesn't constitute a statement. It cannot be said to be true or false. And so even though we have since here, since is not functioning as a premise indicator in this sentence. The same applies to so in the second sentence. So is a conclusion indicator, but cute that follows so is not a statement. And therefore, so in this sentence is not serving as a conclusion indicator. And then we come to another key term, conclusion. What is a conclusion in an argument? It is the statement. Yes, Nathaniel.
Sir, please. A word like run, after it follows so, can it be a statement?
No.
Like an example, like the lion is out, so run. Does it conclude
so
the
run?
Yeah.
Yes, so run. Run here means so you should run. Because
over
of the
run can be classified as a statement?
Yes, you should run. So run. So over there, yes, even though it is one word, it is an active word. Because the implication is that so you should run. Even though the subject is not stated, the subject is implied from the first premise. So if you want to write it in full, it will be that so you should run. You should run is a statement. Also run.
Because the lion is out.
But in some instances, when you say run or you should run, it cannot be said to be true or false because it is a command. So depending on how you put it. But if you say, so Kofi runs, that is a statement that can be said to be true or false. So you should run because it is in the command form. It cannot be said to be true or false. Commands are not true or false. They depend on the action that is elicited from the command. If I say, so run, and you don't run, it cannot be said to be true or false. If I say, eat the food, that sentence cannot be said to be true or false. Eat the food. You can decide to eat, you can decide not to eat. We'll come to these statements, how to analyze these statements in our next lecture, next week. Are we okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we come to conclusion, the concept conclusion in an argument. What is a conclusion? It is the statement that all other statements in an argument provide support to. So it is only one statement. The rest of the statements in the argument provide evidence in support of it. That is the conclusion. So you find that in this example, statement 1, statement 2 are providing evidence in support of this statement. Therefore, this statement is our conclusion. And then you also find that this statement, okay, that's it. We are only explaining. So the first two statements provide evidence in support of the third statement. Therefore, the third statement is our conclusion. The same applies to this one. Okay, so our conclusion, we can, that's like how we have features of a premise. A conclusion can be said to be explicit or implicit. If it is explicit, it is clearly written in the argument. It comes with the premises and then the conclusion is stated, or the argument comes with premises and the conclusion. Everything is stated for you, or at least the conclusion is clearly stated for you. You don't have to figure out.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, please, does it mean there can't be any conclusion if the statements do not provide support to?
Yes, if the statement do not provide support to it, there's no conclusion.
Okay,
There's no
then.
conclusion. And therefore, all the statements cannot be said to be an argument. Once you can't draw a conclusion from it, those statements cannot be said to be an argument. They're just statements standing on me independently, without any logical connection for you to draw a conclusion.
Thank you,
Do you
sir.
get it? Okay. Now, other times the conclusion is implicit. When you say implicit, it is not stated in the argument. You have to analyze the argument and figure out the conclusion. One of us will have to clean the board. It won't be me. Therefore, what? The conclusion is not stated. But based on the logical connection between the sentence one of statement one and statement two, you should be able to draw a conclusion. And what will be the conclusion?
It could be anyone.
Yeah, you will clean the board. It means you will clean the board. It could be anyone, and use the word you for them. You as singular, you as plural. Naomi will go home or visit the boyfriend after lectures today. Naomi will not go home after lectures today. We have not stated the conclusion, but based on the logical connections between the two statements, we should be able to draw a conclusion. What will be the conclusion?
Naomi will visit her boyfriend after lectures today.
Yes. So that conclusion is not stated for you to see in black and white. So when you figure out the conclusion, that conclusion is an implicit conclusion. You can draw a conclusion. It is not there for you, but you can draw a conclusion from it. All right. So the conclusion of an argument, we find that all the examples we have looked at, the conclusion is the last statement. But let's be careful. It is not always the case that the conclusion is the last statement. Depending on how a person, an arguer, will construct the argument, the conclusion can start the argument. It can be in the middle of the argument, and it can be at the end of the argument. So it can be anywhere in the argument. It can begin the argument, it can be in the middle, and it can end the argument. So don't always jump to the conclusion that the last statement is the conclusion. Don't rush to pick the last statement as your conclusion. Carefully analyze the statements and find out which of them is not serving as evidence to the others. Sometimes people start with a conclusion and then they provide evidence to support it. And this is an example here. I started this with a conclusion. Jack could not have been the murderer. Why? Because of 1, 2. So the conclusion started my argument. So in the exam, sometimes I do that. I'll give you a number of statements and I'll ask you which one is a conclusion. So here I have 4 statements. And the first statement is my conclusion. I said we could not have done any better than we did. Why? Because of 1, 2, 3. So my conclusion started the argument. But somebody will pick the last one as the conclusion. Because we succeeded in fixing the problem in a day. Because we did far better than these people who tried to fix it or who used many days to fix it. Because we were able to fix the problem. Then we could not have done better than we did. So all of them are supporting my statement that we could not have done any better than we did. The conclusion started the argument. So we have come to the end of all the concepts about argument. We are now going to a non-argument. I'm sure in the next 30 minutes or so, our lecture will end. Now, what is a non-argument? simply a group of statements that do not contain a conclusion or from which a conclusion cannot be drawn. As somebody asked, so if we can't draw a conclusion from it, or if there's no conclusion in it, that is not an argument. There can be many statements. Once we cannot draw a conclusion from them, or once these statements do not contain a conclusion, all of them together do not constitute an argument. A number of statements that do not constitute an argument are called non-arguments. But the technical definition of a non-argument is that you have a group of statements without an inferential relationship. Without an inferential relationship. They are not connected together in such a way that you can make an inference. You can draw a conclusion. Inference means conclusion, to draw a conclusion, or the process of drawing a conclusion. So they are not connected to each other to the extent that one leads to the other. And because one leads to the other, they all lead us to a particular conclusion. Once they don't have that characteristic, then they are not arguments. Or when you say argument, they are all what? All together cannot form an argument. So we call them non-arguments. And there are many of such non-arguments. If you have reports, all the statements in the report can be said to be a non-argument. Unsupported assertions and all that. So we'll come to them. Let's take them, some of them, one after the other. We have opinions, warnings, advice, beliefs, opinions. All of them don't come with a conclusion. I'm sure if you recite, there are Muslims here. If I ask you to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, there are Christians here. If I ask you to recite the Lord's Prayer, at the end of the day, you say Amen or Amen. Ask yourself, what is the conclusion? The word Amen is not a statement. So you have so many statements in the Lord's Prayer, but there's no conclusion. So beliefs and all that, advice, warning, they don't come with a conclusion. And therefore, all the statements put together to provide a warning, to provide the advice, to serve as a belief, as a prayer, are non-argument. And then we have a report. The same applies to a report. When you have a number of statements put together, there's a function going on at this place. The president is in, the vice president is also in, all the ministers have arrived, and blah, blah, blah. No conclusion. It's just a series of statements being stated. They are not logically connected to each other on the basis of which we can draw a conclusion. And then you have statements that are loosely connected. They may be talking about a particular theme, a particular issue, but they are not linked to each other that can help us to draw a conclusion. So for example, we have this example. Yes, we know Kofi and Nama are in class. Yes, we know some of the students are in class. Yes, we know the teacher just entered the class to start today's lecture. And so what conclusion? They are not linked together. They are statements which are not connected to each other to the extent that one sentence leads us into, one statement leads us into another and another to be able to draw a conclusion. Illustrations. Illustrations are examples. Examples. For you to say, for example, it means you have already stated the claim. You have already stated if you don't state the claim, you can't say, for example. So the example is only magnifying a statement or a claim which has been made earlier. It is not a different claim. So if I say there are many musicians in Ghana, that is a claim. For example, this and this and this It's only adding more weight to my claim, providing insight into my claim. So the example is not a different claim from the earlier one made. But in argument, each claim is different, or each sentence must make a different claim. So where you have 3 or 4 sentences, and one of them is an example, it is not making a claim. Therefore, all the sentences put together will not constitute an argument. As we say, one bad nut spoils all the soup, or the whole soup. I prefer to say one bad nut. One bad nut does not spoil all the soup. It spoils all the nuts. If you put the nuts in your mouth, they are all whole, they are all good. But one bad nut slips into your mouth. When you chew it together with the good ones, you spew it out. It makes all of them not good to you. So one sentence, yes, Nathaniel, which is an example in the list, in the midst of 3 or 4 sentences, will turn all of them together as not an argument. Yes, Nathaniel.
Yeah, sir, please. Earlier you were saying that a conclusion can be analyzed to be either true or false.
Yes.
So if a yes or no question, does it become a conclusion?
No, if you say yes, no,
it
is not a conclusion. It must be a statement. It must be in a statement form. So you see, when you say yes, unless you, what it means is that when you say yes, you can expand it. That Kofi is a fool. Right? And then you say yes. We'll come to that later next week. Anytime you say yes, yes is affirmative. So if I say you are not a fool and you say yes, it is not a conclusion. It is a meaning I am deriving from it. It is an admission to my claim. It is not a conclusion. It is an admission to my claim. It is not a conclusion. And we'll come to how to answer this next week. I am happy some of these questions are coming here, so that next week we can expand or deal with them appropriately. So yes alone is not a statement. Unless it is put in the context that we have 2 or 3 statements, and then the yes serves as an answer, in which case the yes is magnifying one of the statements, or the yes represents one of the statements as a conclusion. Yes, Prince.
Okay, sir. Please, I also want to ask this thing. Like during the COVID-19 era, there was a statement that the policeman made. And I want to know that in this case, in which where will I classify? Is it going to be an agreement or non-agreement? He said that
okay.
The statement was, your argument has fallen flat. So with this kind of statement, where are we putting it? Is it an agreement or non-agreement?
Your argument has fallen flat.
Yes.
You need to know the argument. That is his assessment of the argument. You can assess an argument and say that this is what it means. So if you say your argument has fallen flat, we'll come to the strength of an argument and the weaknesses of an argument. If your argument has fallen flat, it means there's no merit in it. The person has examined the argument and said there's no merit in it. That is his position about the argument. And that is his claim. I can make my argument and you say there's a merit in it. That is your claim. That is how you assess my argument to see. That's like how we said a good argument and a bad argument. I will make the argument, you can assess it and say it has merit. It doesn't have merit. That's your position about it. It doesn't form part of the argument, but arguments can be analyzed for you to draw your own conclusion about the argument, whether the argument is valid or invalid. We'll come to these technical words. So if you say your argument has fallen flat, it means it is invalid. If you say your argument has merit, you think it is valid, or you think it is sound or unsound. Are we okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. But there's a way from which or by which we can make an argument from example.
Hello,
where,
sir.
Yes?
Sir, I want to know the difference between proposition and statement.
I say a proposition is a statement. They are the same. Just that depending on who is writing, some people will use the word proposition, others use the word statement. So you have different scholars. Some will prefer to use proposition, others will prefer to use statement. A proposition is a statement that makes a claim. So when you're defining a proposition, you have to use the word statement. When you're defining a statement, you have to use the word sentence. A statement is a sentence that makes a claim. So they all make claims. And every claim can be said to be true or false. Are you okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm okay.
All right. So somebody can tell you your proposition is unfounded. It means your statement is unfounded. Every proposition or every statement is a sentence, but not all sentences can be said to be propositions or statements. Because some sentences do not make claims. What's your name? It is not making a claim. It's a sentence in the question form, but it is not making a claim. If I say I am your Kofivi, I am making a claim. I can be probed to determine whether I am impersonating Yaovi or not, or I am actually Yaovi. Yes, I said there is a way you can make an argument from statements that have example or that are in the form of, for example, where every example is making a different claim. Even though you are using, for example, and all that, each example is giving you a different claim in support of a particular conclusion. So as my conclusion started the argument, some Ghanaian and Nigerian celebrities die at a young age. So if you take, for example, out, it is making a claim that Junior Pope died in his early 30s. That is a claim. But I've used, for example, as part of it. But it is making a claim. The second one, another example, I can take another example is out. And it is also making a different claim. Susie Williams, a young movie star in Ghana, who died, also died, maybe died in her late 30s. So it is also making a claim. You find that each of them is making a claim to support my conclusion, but they are put in the form of example. So this one qualifies as an argument. And any argument which has some of the statements as, for example, or as examples, but each example is giving you a different claim. It is called an argument from example. And then explanation. When you make a statement, that statement is a claim. Other statements which are made to explain it are not making different claims. They are only providing details to the claim. And therefore, where you have statements explaining another statement, but not making different claims, then they do not constitute an argument. So where you are explaining, in most cases, when you are making statements to explain yourself, those statements that explain an earlier claim altogether will not constitute an argument. Because explanations were only given better and further particulars about a claim which was already made. It is not giving a different claim. It is only adding more weight to the claim that has been made. So in all instances, explanations do not constitute an argument. And then where you have sentences which are in the form of exclamation. Yeah, go on.
Please, with your earlier slide about explanation.
Yes.
The Titanic sank. Can it be one premise?
It can be one premise, but it is not always the case. The Titanic sank is one premise. It hit an iceberg. It's another premise. Yes, it could be the reason. But I am saying it is not always the case that explanations serve as an argument. It is not the case that here it is making two claims. One claim is that the Titanic sank. The other claim is that it hit an iceberg. The statement is providing more illustration or more meaning to why the Titanic sank. Yes, it could be the reason for it, which is it hit the iceberg becomes a reason for the Titanic sank. But I'm saying that in most cases where you are explaining something, Kofi is tall, he looks like this, he appears like this and all that. Or I did this, I did the work, I submitted my assignment, blah, blah, blah. In most cases, you are just edifying an earlier claim. You are only adding more weight to an earlier claim. But in this instance, even though the Titanic sank because it hit an iceberg, can be an explanation. It can also be in the form of an argument. I just put it there to show that it can be an explanation. It can also be an argument. But you have in the ordinary sense and providing details to something. The details are not providing evidence in support of a conclusion. I don't know whether you get it.
Yes, sir, I understand.
Yes, then we have exclamation. Anytime you have a statement, a sentence which is in the form of an exclamation in the midst of other sentences, then we cannot have an argument. Exclamations are about the feelings of people, strong feelings of people. And so exclamations cannot be said to be true or false. And so where you have exclamations as part of the number of statements you are analyzing, they do not constitute an argument. And then you have a conditional statement. A conditional statement is in the form of if A, then B. If I have money, then I'll buy a car. It does not mean that, the if part of the statement is called an antecedent. The then part of the statement is called the consequent. So it's made up of two parts. But the two parts are joined together to make one statement. So it is a compound premise, or a compound proposition. It is not the case that you have to separate them to stand individually so that one is the premise, the other is the cause. So the other is the conclusion. No, the two are conjoined to make a compound proposition. So for it to become an argument, then it must be joined with another statement. If it has to be joined with another statement, then you can connect those two statements together logically to draw a conclusion. If I have money, then I will buy a car. I don't have money. Therefore, I will not buy. No, if I have money, then I'll buy a car. I have money. Therefore, I will buy a car. Or if I have money, then I will buy a car. I did not buy a car. Means I did not have money. So you have to get another statement to join it before you can have an argument from it. But a conditional sentence or statement alone is not enough to become an argument. Sentence fragment. An incomplete sentence is a sentence fragment. It doesn't have a subject, it doesn't have a predicate. So anytime you have an incomplete sentence, it doesn't make a claim. Therefore, it is not, or it together with the other sentences that are made cannot become an argument. You cannot get the meaning out of it. If I say rice and beans, I'm not making any claim about rice and beans. And so it cannot be. So if you have it with other statements, the fact that we have one sentence fragment mixed in them means that all the statements put together cannot become an argument. Yeah, there's a hand up. I saw a hand up. Or I read the last one, expository passage. Expository passage is a passage which is written in the paragraph form. Expository passage. And I'm sure most of you, when you are writing your essays, you paragraph your essays. And there is something about paragraphs. I'm sure next semester, if I have to teach you communication skills, we'll get there. Paragraphing requires that you divide your sentences into different parts. You should have what is called a topic sentence, which states the main idea of the paragraph. The rest of the sentences will explain it. As we said, explanation doesn't constitute an argument. So it states the sentence, but the main idea. The rest of the sentences will now take the main idea and break it into the component parts and explain. If the explanation does not provide different claims to support the conclusion, to support the topic sentence, then they are not arguments. Then the expository passage or the paragraph is not an argument. However, if the supporting sentence, those that explain it are called the supporting sentence. If the supporting sentences are making different claims to support the topic sentence that you have made, then it constitutes an argument. But in most instances, expository passages seek to state the main idea, take the main idea, break it down, and explain. And so you find that paragraphs, the way you write them, paragraphs don't constitute an argument in most instances. Any question? Any question? All right, so next week we will take language and definition. You can, I think you have the textbook which are prepared for you. If you don't have it, I will send it to you through the classroom. So read language and definition so that we'll just explain it next week. Any question? Any questions?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, so see you next week.
Sir, please, can we get a slide?
You can get I'll send them to you through the classroom.
So I've gotten an answer to your question.
You say? Hello?
To the question you gave,
the question you gave, I've gotten an answer.
You said we'll do it in class, so next week.
Yeah.
No, he said
All right.
Okay, Doc, thank you for your time. And,
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right.